Welcome to Hip Hop Now Podcast. If you're from the future, you know what to do. Get your ass out of here. Don't disrespect the legend. Hip hop is here to stay. Let's get right into the business.
What up, y'all? I am your host, Vegas, and this is Hip Hop Now Podcast, a podcast specifically designed to keep you caught up on all things hip hop music and culture that happened throughout the week. 50 years of hip hop. Big shout out to the Patreon supporters over at patreon.com/hip hop now. And if you really don't write that stuff down, because who writes, right? Or you can't remember it, you can't commit it to memory. Well, the link is in the description of this episode. Click on it. Why don't you? Like I said, 50 years of hip hop. And if you missed my last episode, I did a full-on review of the Little Brother documentary, May the Lord Watch. All my thoughts about the group as a fan, the documentary, the absence of Ninth Wonder, all that good stuff. So if you would like to, maybe you haven't watched it, or maybe you would just like to hear what others think about it, like myself, check that video out. It'll be linked at the end of this episode, and also in the description, because not everybody watches this podcast on YouTube. Some people still listen. They still just like to listen and work and do stuff like that. So cool, right? Cool. Also, if you don't know, next week, if you're from the future and you already know and it's already out, man, get your ass out of here. Okay. But what I'm saying is, well, hit the like button before you go. All right. But next week, I will release my end of the year episode, Hip Hop Now Podcast Best of 2023, which is 50 years of hip hop, by the way. And in quick summary, this was a slow year, ironically, compared to previous years. And when I say that, I don't mean in regards to the amount of content that was released. I'm talking more so about in previous years, it was very difficult to narrow down a top 5 for me. Like, it was kind of like I would go back and forth with joints and like, yo, this one, that one, this one, that one. This year, it became pretty clear and played out pretty early in the year. So I'm a little surprised that I mostly have a top 5 that I think I might have mentioned months back, right? But we shall see. But within that same show, I'm also going to do like a top 10 honorable mention, right? Just 10 albums that I thought were good or dope that didn't make my top 5, but I would like people to know, yo, you should check these joints out, right? I don't follow anybody else's list. I like to read and see what people think, right? So you can leave your top 5 in the comments of this episode or wait till the next episode and we chop it up. But I like the conversation around it. I like to see what other people have chosen, because sometimes, you miss things. And, if you see all on Twitter or different publications highlight a particular album and you like, damn, I didn't even hear that joint. Well, I like discovering music. So if I missed it, cool. I'm good with that. But that doesn't mean that now that I'm looking at your top 5 or top 5 from a couple of people that has this one album, that I won't go and just say, well, over the holiday, I'm going to check it out. Right. But stay tuned for that. Should be great. The top 10, I'm just going to run through a list, but the top 5, I'm going to give you a nice, thorough reason why I chose them. So stay tuned for that. All right. Big shout out to hiphopdx.com, allhiphop.com, thesourcemagazine.com. Sometimes I check them out. And a couple of places where I get my stories from. Let's get right into the business. Andre 3000 says, turned down, says that he turned down every hip hop 50 appearance. Now that's not a quote, but that's the headline, right? I got this from hiphopdx.com, who got it from an interview that he did with CBS Mornings. An interview that he did recently. This is today is I'm recording this December 8th. Okay, this was this week when he did it on December 6th. Here's some quotes of why. I didn't feel the urge or desire. I don't necessarily like looking back. And I wouldn't want to be in a place where I'm doing it just because I'm trying to meet an expectation. I didn't get into Outcast for that. We were just kids trying to see how far we could take it. Now, I'm not going to go any further than that, because that is his reason for why he turned down appearances for Hip Hop 50. I got a problem with that, y'all. I have no problem with Three Stacks deciding to drop an album playing the flute. That is that man's business, and honestly, I'm not just a hip hop head, I'm a music fan, so I kind of have the palette for different things. So I'm open to listening to it without feeling like, but if he would have rapped, I don't care. I got a whole bunch of Andre Three Stacks rapping in my library. I'm good. So I was cool with it. This I don't like. You know why? A couple of reasons. But mainly, this is the 50th year of hip hop. It's a celebration of the art form. You can choose to celebrate it in any way you want, but it's a disservice to one of the greatest groups of all time, which is Outkast. Your intentions getting into the game don't have to represent whatever commercial entity was trying to get you for Hip Hop 50, because that's not what it's about. It's really about celebrating hip hop. So you could choose to take a bag or be a part of this or not be a part of that. But it's 50 years of hip hop, dog. And and I'm not saying this in a derogatory way as far as saying use, but you decided to see how far you can take this thing. Well, this thing took you very far, because if you were just Andre Benjamin and you weren't Three Stacks with the history that's directly tied to hip hop, we would not be checking for your flute album, fam. We just would not. And you could be dumb nice as Andre Benjamin on the flute and the rapping, but you wouldn't, probably in some cases you probably wouldn't even get the exposure because of just how people are and how the game is and all of that. But you are one half Outkast, one of the greatest hip hop groups of all time. And if we're gonna sit up there and look at artists from different decades, from different regions, and you not participate in any way, right? Because Jay-Z didn't necessarily participate either, but he did his Book of Hove thing. And in a lot of ways, okay, yeah, it's kind of self-serving, but it's Jay-Z. That's how he was. That's how he always been that way. So what, right? But it's a thing you can do during the 50th year of hip hop, right? Oh, I'm a Jay-Z fan. I'm gonna go see the Jay-Z exhibit. I'm gonna go to the thing in Yankee Stadium, the big concert. I'm gonna go down to Atlanta when they did this, and like, you know what I'm saying? Like, everybody's doing something, and just one thing that this does, right? Because a similar thing happened where people were getting on their high horse to say, not their high horse, but let me be clear. People were getting on their hip hop authority activists horse, whatever, to say, how you gonna have that without Hammer? Come to find out from Hammer, he says, oh, they asked me, but I turned it down. I mean, come on, what do you want? Hammer was included. He didn't want to do it. Now, it might have been something lowly or not right entertainment wise, and that's his prerogative. But don't act like certain people being left out. And I feel like some of that was being said about Outkast, but here we are. Maybe Big Boy wanted to do it, but Three Stacks didn't want to do it, right? So the thing is the man can have his opinion, and the man can decide not to do a hip hop 50 anything. But I'm getting a lot of negative energy from him towards hip hop. And honestly, I don't think it's because he doesn't appreciate hip hop, because he's also said he does. I think he don't like y'all. I don't think he likes the he said he dealt with some um what was it? Not some anxieties or like some social anxieties or something like that. So I could dig it. And in this climate, for somebody who already suffered through that, uh, it's heightened when you have the people who, not everybody, but the people who are hip hop heads go on Twitter is like, yo, why you not releasing this? Why you not releasing that? Because if Three Stacks would have put an album out and y'all didn't dig it, y'all would have destroyed the man. A hip hop album, I'm talking about, because y'all already had mad jokes for the flute. So he's reading the room. But when it comes to Hip Hop 50, man, I didn't watch every single dedication at a show that happened, but I watched reactions of hip hop fans, particularly from those eras. And most people just enjoyed it because it was a celebration of the things they love. And to not have Outkast be a part of that just seems so weird. You know what I'm saying? Because most people uh leave them out sometimes, not all the time, but most people kind of leave them out. I don't, but it's a thing where it's like, how can you not, when both of you guys are healthy and here, you know? And even when he talked in the interview, because I don't want to take too much time on this, but even when he talked about previously, like when Fife passed away, and well, actually, no, I'm mixing the Little Brother documentary, but it's related because I remember uh, when Fife passed away, it was either Big Boy or Andre 3000 or both or whatever kind of talked about how there was talks of a tribe and Outcast kind of thing musically. And I was thinking about the moment in the Little Brother documentary when Fife passed, and that made Big Pooh and Fonte, after not speaking to each other for years, um, get back together as friends, and then eventually release an album. And that's the thing. And it was really, it wasn't just Fife passing, but it was also the fact that Big Pooh had a health scare also. That's what I think about. You guys who started out as kids, you had to be hip hop heads to try it, right? It wasn't like, yeah, I'm a try to rap. That sounds like you're not committed, but I know that is the complete opposite. You are fully committed to hip hop. We know this. South got something to say and all that, right? So why treat it like I don't like to look back? You're not looking back. You're celebrating the careers of the people who influenced you, your own careers, and just showing people what hip hop is, totally what it totally is, right? It's not just the music today. It's not just the 90s, right? It's not just New York. It's not just the West Coast or gangster rap. It's all of it. So how can you have a conversation or a performance about the history of hip hop, and we ain't really touching the dirty South in a way we know, because Outkast is a part of that story. So I say all that to say that I don't necessarily like his reason, because I don't really buy it, but I could understand if he didn't want to deal from a logistics standpoint with that side of the industry anymore, which I think that has way more to do with it than it being about not wanting to revisit Outcast stuff or hip hop stuff. I just don't like it being said out loud in the public, because people take that and just say to themselves, yeah, who cares about that old stuff? No, we ain't doing that. We already got a problem. So there's that. There are my thoughts on that part of it. Little Yachty, and I know you don't care, but let's talk about it real quick. Little Yachty says he raps better than most rappers, and he also said that's a fact. Now, I don't even know if I want to read a quote from this dude. Yeah, after reading it and not reading it to y'all, y'all can just go check it out. Little Yachty said in another interview how he feels underappreciated, and he's kind of like been amping himself up to shout his name out, like, yo, I'm it, I was it, I've been it, I'm still it, I can rap better, and all that stuff. And this year he put out uh, a rock album, like I think earlier in the year, and I listened to it, and I was like, oh, it was actually better than I thought. Now I know for the genre, it's not like anything groundbreaking. It's probably basic. It's the same difference with Three Stacks having this experimental flute album, right? If you're a hip hop head and you don't listen to anything but hip hop mostly, you're not checking for that because there's no bars, right? And even if you listen to it, you might not like it because you don't really understand what this, experimental ambient type music is. But within the genre, or let me just say real quick, or maybe you like it a lot. And then maybe you oversell it. Like, it was the greatest flute player. Who doing it like this? This is a masterpiece. But within the art form itself and the people who play this kind of music and who have a catalog of this kind of music, it's very basic to them. It's a good start, but it's basic, right? It's the same thing with Yachty. I was surprised by the rock album, and I was like, well, I don't really like him as a rapper, but this was cool, right? But it wasn't. But if you've heard rock albums before, it is like a start. It's nothing groundbreaking. It's nothing. It's not adding anything to the art form. It doesn't necessarily hurt it. It's just like, okay, someone else could do that. What's the big deal? But I noticed with him, when he was promoting that rock album, it was kind of like he was trying to be like, I'm trying to, I don't like where the hip hop game is, so I'm going off to a bigger tier, right? And that was doing the rock thing, being experimental with his artistry, almost like a flex of, I don't have to drop a rap album because I'm gonna drop this rock album, right? Which was cool. But then it felt like he didn't get the reaction he wanted, right? Like, he's a genius. Come back and rap, Yachty. Nobody said that. And I ain't talking about old heads like myself, who maybe when he came out, it worked for the kids of that generation. But let's sum up what Lil Yachty's saying. First of all, I don't know who you're talking about when you say you're the best rapper. You're not even close. I don't even hear complete sentences when you talk, let alone bars. Okay. And if I even hear bars, I question if you wrote them, because you don't have a rap career. And all of us, well, let me take that because there are some people, right? Uh, and I ain't gonna say no names because I want to open that can or that Pandora's box. But you don't have a career where you just don't display bars until so late. You got a ghostwriter, fam. Somebody help it. Because you could have did this before with the music you already made, and it still could have been catchy and all that stuff. People like Jay-Z and Biggie and other rappers already showed you that you could have a hit that can be in the club but can also contain bars. Drake does it, J. Cole does, like Kendrick does it, everybody does it. Okay, so it's not impossible. And I know when it comes to hip hop, it's like sports where you're like, yo, you're supposed to You're supposed to think like that. You're supposed to talk like that. You're right. But then you step into a different realm when you start to talk like that, Yachty. Because when you start to say like you the best, well, then we start to analyze your bars. This is 50 years of hip hop, dog. Certain things don't change, right? Now, if you're just making music, like for a quick example, like a dude like Flow Rider, right? In the past, I used to be like, man, get that out of here, blah, blah, blah. But then I just like, you know what? There's an audience for that. Why am I looking to rate bars for a song where you just supposed to be partying and being happy and right? So it'd be different if you're just talking about, yo, when it comes to those types of jams, I was that guy or I'm still that guy. You start just generalizing best rapper, man, we're gonna start listening to your bars. And again, we could barely listen to your interviews and get complete sentences and things that make sense. Know your square. Don't say things that aren't true. Because even rappers with bars are talking about their albums as a classic before they come out. And we hear it and we're like, yeah, it ain't no classic. But they're better than you, Yachty. They can afford to, like, West Side Gun is better than you. And West Side Gun ain't no bar king, but his music is better than yours. And I may not have liked his last album, but it's still his worst album is better than your best album, right? So I kind of look at it like, shorty, relax. He flexing jewelry. It's just really tiresome. But not to be so judgmental, I will say this. Yachty, understand your audience. Understand your generation. Understand the current generation. Your generation, the current generation, everything is microwave with them. They run through music, you the guy, because you had that one single and they played it to death and it was a soundtrack to their week or their month or that semester. When you start doing follow-ups, they start to taper off because they are only concerned with what's trending. And if you ain't trending for life or you're able to duplicate that conversation around your music every time, like someone like a Drake, you just don't have people checking for you. And you can't be angry like, yo, y'all don't see me, because they're never going to see you because they've been stopped listening to you a long time ago. And they are your fans. It just happens, right? Unless you self-sabotage and do something that gets people off your music. But like the baby, for example, right? Yeah, I know the controversy with him. You can kind of look at it like, yeah, he should have read the room and saw where he was within the realm of pop culture and what the results were going to be. But also before that, I saw mad cats who were way younger than me who were already tired of him. They liked the album I liked, and then they checked out. And he dropped like 4 or 5 albums after that. But he was also in a pop realm. So it was giving him legs because it was like, okay, my core fans may have kind of moved on. It's a trend in music today, unfortunately. People are always just looking to be hyped about what's coming up next. And that's the excitement, that's the enjoyment. And once it's out and the conversation just ends. And some of these people are not listening to the music no more, and it just came out. So that's what I mean. It in one way, no, you ain't nice like that. You're not the best rapper. And in another way, it's like, yo, read the room, right? Maybe don't talk as much. Like when Meek Mill was like, yo, y'all think my music whack? Should I come out with more? And everybody was all honest. And it was like, if you don't want to hear them answers, don't ask. Just do it. Just drop something that's dope. And use all the money and promotions you can to maybe get it back organically. Because once they gone, man, they gone like, oh yeah, we off him. So there you have it. And lastly, I'm trying not to make this one of the spiciest episodes by constantly judging. But the stories this week have just all made me say, huh? What? Huh? What? Huh? What? And sometimes it just happens that way. This podcast, so you know, if you are new here, I appreciate you. Thanks for subscribing and all that. But I just find like there are things where I'm just like, just put the music out. Y'all doing a lot of talking. And this podcast is really about you going elsewhere for the gossip and who got a case pending and who paid people off, right? And who on trial and all. Like, I keep all of that out of it because at the end of the day, it's about the music. Who got an album out? Blah 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 blah. All that good stuff. That's why I'm doing my end of the year special, and it's just music. But there are weeks like this where there's just news, and lately there's been a lot of controversy and talk around. So if you don't know, Derek D. Angeletti, synonymous with Bad Boy Records back in the days as a producer, but also a pretty dope producer in his own right, you know. Also synonymous as the voice of the mad rapper, right? And if you're young and you're like, who's the mad? Is he, oh, he mad? He a rapper? No, that's not what I mean. Yes, but that's not what I mean. The Mad Rapper was a character made famous on Bad Boy recordings to mimic those that was hating on Bad Boy. Honestly, when I first heard the Mad Rapper, I was like, they talking about Ghostface? Right? Look up the history, shark biters, right? But you can hear Mad Rapper skits on Biggie's second album and Mace album and the Lox album on Bad Boy. He eventually had his own album. 50 Cent's single How to Rob featured the Mad Rapper, you know, talking on it. Like it was a thing, and it was funny and it was humorous. He was on Benny the Butcher's I won't say first album, but I guess what felt like his first official major album. Um, he was on that, and the skit was still funny, like back in the days, right? But recently, Derek D. Angeletti appeared on Math Hoffa's podcast, right? Which is called My Expert Opinion, barbershop setting. They bring in the guests, ask a bunch of questions. Usually there's some nostalgia with it, like having him on. And he was on there and he had some words regarding, he had a lot of words, but he talked a lot about himself musically as a producer. But in doing so, he upset Jay Dilla fans with some of his words. And I'm not going to, again, you should go and watch it on YouTube because I think it's better if you hear it from him. So I'm not going to play a clip or none of that because I don't know if he cussing and it's a family podcast. I don't remember that, but I will read a little bit. Now, just real quick, Hip Hop DX did good by putting some of his credits here, right? And I don't want you to think that this is all he made, but these are some of the credits, right? He made Biggie's Hypnotize. He made All About the Benjamins beat, right? Jay-Z's Where I'm From, right? As a part of the Hitman production team, but D. He got some credits for sure. He said this. Let me just read from the article that you can also read on Hip Hop DX. Former Bad Boy Records producer Derek D. Angeletti has ruffled the feathers of Jay Dilla fans by claiming he has a better catalog than the late rap legend. Now, why do they say the late rap legend? Don't you know that Jay Dilla rap is secondary? Don't get me started. Appearing on Math Hoffa's My Expert Opinion podcast, the NYC native said, see, they starting up stuff. I love Jay Dilla to death, but he can't see my catalog. Now, I'm not mad at that line. Hip hop is competitive. So he gonna say what he say, right? And I think Dilla would have challenged him if he were here. He would have challenged him. It's hip hop. Then they probably be like, "Yo, we working together." That's hip hop. That's how we do. We argue. Well, yo, I'm better. I'm better. Let's see. It's cool, but Dilla ain't here. Keep that in mind. Here's the quote: "Put their ish up against mine. My ish is all over the place. Ish I made 27 years ago." So let's see if we can find one more quote for y'all. You had, well, what is this? Oh, this is, I don't want to read a quote from this dude. We just gonna keep it moving, y'all. Let me just get to this. Other producers and historians and people in the hip hop game started to challenge Derek D. Dot on saying that, because he kind of lined Dilla fans and his music up, or summarized it all as backpack. Right? When he say my issues all over the place, he's saying I got boom bap for the backpackers. I got R&B hits. I got, you know, commercial radio hits. I got hits and other, just everything, right? Comparing himself to Dilla. But in a lot of ways, he showed a little bit of ignorance as it relates to Dilla, because Dilla is not just a dude who had Slum Village or yo, I worked with Common. Like, he gave other rappers radio hits also, like Q-Tip and Busta Rhymes, right? Dilla did. Now, this is what the difference is. D Dot is not necessarily a household name, and neither is Jay Dilla. But when you start to say what records D Dot produced, like The Benjamins, which was huge, Hypnotized, which is huge, both which still get played on the radio to this day in certain markets, right? Where I'm from, which is like one of Jay-Z's best songs, but probably more so on a boom bap tip, on an underground tip, or on a deep cuts tip. So that's what he's saying would range. Like, I had the biggest of the biggest hits, and then I got the street hits. So he like, I'm doing what you doing down here, but you ain't doing what I'm doing up here. And there's a little bit of truth to that. But it's almost like you're playing like Dilla is only an underground dude. This is the thing. That's probably the biggest blemish on Dilla's career, is that he needed an agent that would expose more people to what he produced. Because the songs you may say that Dilla produced, most people don't even know he produced it. Most people know that didn't, and I'm not talking about household name, but I'm just talking about within hip hop, know what D Dot did, because he was on a bigger stage with more exposure and promotion for people to go and look and say, who did this? But Dilla, it was almost like Dilla stuff was like, even if Buster said it, people didn't catch it. People didn't correlate Dilla is JD from Slum Village and the Uma and worked with a Tribe Called Quest, and all this stuff, right? Some people just didn't make those connections with Dilla's music to say, you may hear people, like, yo, who's the top 5 producers, right? A dude who doesn't really have his own top 5 list, but maybe know that hip hop well, and ask you that question. And this person, you'd be like, well, Dilla, Preem, Dr. Dre, they're probably like, okay, Dr. Dre, Premier, RZA, they can't really make a connection between Dilla and what he produced, because Dr. Dre is tied to Snoop Dogg and NWA, larger than life groups in hip hop. But so is Dilla. It's just that you don't know that he did this wide range of things. Let me just say this, and let me end on this. I think D Dot is talented, and worthy of being mentioned when you talk about some of the best producers in hip hop history. Whether you like it or not, that Benjamin's beat, it just never got old to me. I think it's one of the best beats in the world, and it's not even that complicated, right? When you're talking about technique, as far as I could hear, right? The same thing with Hypnotize, but it's just like doing the right thing with the right sample and being able to have hit underground hits and stuff like that, like just doing all of that. And I don't even think D Dot did where I'm from, but who knows? Maybe he did, and who knows? Maybe he did most of the work. Who knows? But nevertheless, do your research on Jay Dilla. He had a book that was put out. Well, there was a book put out recently in recent years that really talked about the history of Dilla and more so his technique. When you inspire musicians to change the way they see musicians, there's a difference between a dude who samples and creates something new based off of the sample, right? But somebody had already did the work to create the sound. That's the true musician in the situation, right? The true producer in the situation. They're pulling the melody from inspirations and things like that. You're taking what they created and you're building upon it. Dilla was able to change the way people hear music, and that's not any hyperbole or nothing. That's just a fact. What people, including myself, heard as being offbeat was just him turning something that would sound offbeat into a different frequency. And this is not me, master scientist with no, this is facts from musicians who analyze what he was doing with sampling, chopping samples, right? And how he put them together and how he could take a song and it's unrecognizable. I just don't hear D Dot producing on that level. There's a reason why we look at somebody like Premier or really even RZA for their production styles, especially RZA for their production styles, because it wasn't about just sampling for them. It was about how can I freak this thing, and it's not I'm just taking a melody, from a beat and chopping that up, but it's essentially that same melody or that same bass line. You're talking about taking something that is unrecognizable because how he chopped it up. Like mostly producers are the ones that catch what he's doing. But what I understand from all of this is just by looking at the video, because of body language, D Dot just wants his respect as a producer. But I don't think you're going to get respect by, saying you're better than a man who's no longer here. Because he can't challenge you. And it's borderline disrespectful. Leave him out of it. Just Blaze. I mean, he the person everybody been beating on anyway. He's like, I'm better than him. Do that. Do something. Or don't use anybody in order to talk about yourself. Just tell them what you did. Let your work speak for itself. Let them read the credits and hear you say, I did this and I did that. They'll do the rest. But when you got a kind of energy because you want to be respected, as you should be. I mean, I was like, yo, D Dot's kind of dope. But this ain't the way. This ain't the way to do it, man. Stop it. That's going to do it for me. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Spill, all that at Vegas World INC. Also know that this podcast is not only available in video form via YouTube, but also on all of your audio podcasting platforms from Apple to Spotify, everything, okay? Not everything, but everything. All you got to do is search for Hip Hop Now Podcast. When you see the logo, hit subscribe, hit the like button, review if that's an option, comment, because I do respond, especially here on YouTube. And most importantly, share it with people you know would enjoy the same kind of content. Until next time, y'all, I'm not a critic. I'm not mad. I'm just a little spicy today. That's all. I'm a fan. Peace.